Hello and welcome to another Mole Valley Maker turning video. Today I'm going to be turning a small tea light candle holder out of a piece of elm. Throughout this video I'm working on the belief that this is actually a bowl style blank with the grain running perpendicular to the rotational axis. Hence you'll see me using bowl gouges, slightly different profiles to spindle gouges. I'm completely wrong, it's a spindle blank. I don't know what was in my head at the time. I think it was in my bowl blank pile, not my spindle blank pile, but doesn't really matter. It just means the I do grind them very slightly differently with the tools, so the cuts are not quite what I expect. And here I've got my tool rest probably about 2mm too high. I'm having to raise the gouge at the end to get the little nub out of the centre. Doesn't really matter because all I'm trying to do is get the end of the blank level. Doesn't matter if it's concave, I just don't want it convex. Sorry, yes, convex. Now I'm checking it's at least flat. And here I'm going to use a 45mm 4s and a bit just to create a quick mortise for my smaller chuck drawers. I only drill to a depth of about 4mm, just enough to give it a little bit of hold. And next I'm going to use carbide detail tool just to give it a little bit of a dovetail. And I'm also going to add some detail rings just to give it a little bit of interest on the bottom. Which means I won't feel the need to go back and cut the mortise out. So I'm going to go for a kind of barrel effect on this, so I'm just trying to turn the base over a little bit, and then in a moment I will be defining and adding a black band to simulate the metal band on an old wooden barrel. Just really truing the face up. First time I've tried this design, so you can see me kind of thinking how I'm going to make the cuts, and here I've decided to use the skew to cut little divots in either side of those, well, on the pencil lines effectively. Here I'm trying to use the, I think it's a 6mm bowl gouge, just to try and take the shape round, take some wood off to make that band stand out. And now I've decided to use my thin parting tool, which is shaped a little bit like a badan. So the cutting profile's right at the bottom. I'm just using that to put quite a sharp shouldering on that raised section, simulating the metal band. And here I am using a, it's ground as a skew chisel, but I'm using it as a negative rake scraper. Again, because I think I want a bowl blank still. Because if I'd have realised this was a spindle blank, I would have just used the skew in its normal orientation. So cutting rather than scraping. But this is a skew I'm reground. It was from a cheap set of tools, a sort of set you can get online for I think about £20, or you get about 6 or 7 tools. I think this was a square-ended scraper, and I've just reground it with 2 bevels on the, or 2 facets rather, on the skew. It's quite good actually. It loses its sharpness quickly because it's very poor quality steel. And here I'm using my homemade burning wire to burn 2 rings either side of the raised section. This chars the wood and actually prevents the ink that I'm about to apply to the ring from bleeding out. So it's both decorative and functional. And I'm just using a black drawing ink, nothing special. And in a moment you're about to see me splash a little bit outside of the lines. There I am. I'll tidy that with a bit of sandpaper in a moment. I sand about 90% of it away, and then to just tidy up the edge a little bit, I go back to my burning tool and use a slightly thicker gauge of wire just to expand the burnt section into where the remainder of the ink was. I'm just quickly cleaning up the grain, getting the dust and or mainly dust particles out of it, using a little bit of methylated spirits and a brush to clean up the mortise. And I'm applying some cellulose no, I'm applying some acrylic sanding sealer because of the colour of the can I've just seen, and that's just sealing the wood so that the wax doesn't soak in quite as far. When that's finished, I use some Yorkshire Grit abrasive paste, hit it with some I actually use a bronze embellishing wax. You can just see in the black there before it's spun up that it's got a slightly warm effect to it, and that's both on the black and on the bottom. It just gives it a slightly warmer tone to it, and that's a Hampshire Sheen bronze embellishing wax. And now I've stepped up to, I think, not sure what size that is, I think maybe a 13mm bowl gouge, and I'm just quickly removing the old tenon that was on the piece of timber. Again, I just want to get it flat across, doesn't matter if it's a little bit concave. And then I've used a Forstner bit to drill out most of the depth. I'm just going back in to take the rest of it out. I find that with these I'm using a little pressed metal cups that sit in so that the Tealight doesn't sit straight into the wood, but because they're pressed, it's just sort of caught sight of it there. They do vary very slightly, and even though that Forstner bit might be fine for some of them, that one itself is a little bit tight. Plus it has a flange on it, and where the flange is pushed in, there's a little bit of a radius, so you have to kind of a little bit of playing around to get it to fit nicely and snugly. And here I'm just working up through the grits, I think from 120 up to about 400, using a combination of hand sanding and my little handheld inertia sander, a homemade inertia sander. And then I will apply some more sanding sealer, Yorkshire Grit and bronze embellishing wax. This time I'm actually brushing on the sanding sealer rather than using the spray, because I don't really want to go over and redo what I've already done. And there's the finished article. So I'd just like to thank you very much for watching, and stay safe.